But yeah, well, look, I've got the video camera recording as we speak, and yeah, I don't know how this is going to go for our first podcast, but I like podcasts that you can listen to in the car if you're going on a journey, and it's just two people shooting the breeze, making, But yeah, with regards to, it was very interesting the other day. We were doing a car. And the woman, it's the second time we've done it, and I've never got really a good warm feeling about the woman. She's quite a burly girl, and she's got a very gruff sort of looking face and fairly, I don't know, aggressive sort of attitude, but not nasty or anything, but just an aggressive kind of butch.
You'll pay good money for that kind of attitude, mate.
Yeah, exactly. And we were doing her husband's car as well. And he came out a couple of times and was looking at us, and he never said anything like, hi, how you going, and blah, blah, blah. You guys are doing a great job. Nothing. And then he went inside, and I said to Hanny, I said, I don't know why I've got this really strong feeling that he's under the thumb big time in this relationship. And maybe they've just had an argument, because he just really seemed quite upset, and so I said, I bet, I said, just putting it out there, I wonder if he's a victim of domestic violence in this relationship. And
I gotta say, mate, that video, that second one, I thought that's fantastic, mate. Honestly, there was something I was just like, wow, that's really, really interesting, really, really, and I was like, wow, that's really, I think that really has a lot of value in my book, anyway.
Yeah, I think that all the videos that we do will just get better and better anyway in terms of the message that we put across. But going back to this guy the other day, so I said to Henny, I'm just get this. I've never said this, I just said I get this really weird feeling that this guy's a victim of domestic violence in this relationship. And anyway, so he comes out and hops in just before he hops in the car, I was just about to say to him, "You're welcome," because he never said thank you or anything like that. And it was really early in the morning. It was freezing cold, and our hands were just numb from doing this job. And I thought just a thank you would be nice, But he didn't say anything. And then I bit my tongue, and I just said, "No, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know. Maybe if he is going through a hard time in this relationship." Just don't say it, you'll regret it big time. So I didn't say anything. And then at the end of the job, we did her car as well. She came out, and so this was on Friday, and she said, I asked her, so you got any plans for the weekend? She goes, "No, just hanging out." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she says, "What about you?" And I don't know what it was, mate. I just felt the need. I said, "Oh yeah, my brother and I and Hanny and her sister, we're all working on a YouTube channel called The Hidden Self." She goes, "Oh yeah, what's that about?" I said, "Well, at the moment we're talking about domestic violence, but it's a much broader spectrum of the human mind, spirit, blah 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 blah. But I guess I was fishing, mate. I was fishing about the domestic violence. So yeah, I said we're currently working on domestic violence, and we've just released a video about male domestic violence." She said, "You're kidding me." And she said Shane is a domestic violence victim. And that's her husband, right? And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, in his last relationship. This guy's 6 foot tall, built like a brick shit house.
Yeah.
And he looks like a bodyguard. This is the size and thickness of a bodyguard." And I said, "You're kidding?" She said, "No, his last relationship was really abusive. She broke his nose on numerous occasions, like smashed him with rolling pins and spit on him and scratch his face." And he left, and he was very, very reluctant to leave because he's got a 14-year-old boy with them. Now the 14-year-old boy he doesn't call Shane dad, he calls him stupid. Whenever he talks to him, it's forced, and he just says, "Oh yeah, hi stupid." This is his 14-year-old son calling his dad stupid. The mother has spent pretty much all her time turning him against the father, and the boy is now so confused he's actually tried to commit suicide on 3 or 4 occasions. This is a 14-year-old kid that is so confused about his relationship in the world between his parents and with himself, is that he's self-harming. He takes knives to his wrists, and he doesn't know, he's not 1,000% committed to actually topping himself, but he's self-harming. And he's left notes and told his dad, he said, I'm going to do it, I just don't know when. Can you imagine? And this is the guy that I was about to say to, you're welcome. You know, and then finding all of this out.
What's interesting, that's another slap in the face. Do you know what I mean? It's like another, well, I'm not even good enough. You know,
yeah.
I'm just going to get abused at the slightest thing that I do wrong.
Yeah. And I said to the partner that I was talking to, and I said, how did he get out? And he said, I just had to walk out. He said it was killing me. And then she said, I used to be a victim of domestic violence. She said, but the guy raised his fist to me once. She said, I broke his nose. She said, I just smacked him straight in the face, literally dragged him outside, put him in the garden, called the police, and threw all of his stuff on the garden and said, don't ever come back here again. Now, this was interesting because she was always encouraging this guy. She said, why did you stick around for so long? You're 6'4", you could have easily defended yourself. But he didn't want to hurt her.
Right.
He didn't want to hurt her. So, you know, and with the comments we were getting on Facebook, I was basically saying to them, look, this is a very, very complex issue, domestic violence between males and females, and either one being a victim. But yeah, what's your take on it, mate? What are you?
Well, I think there's lots of what's really interesting, and I think you don't even have to go across the road to understand what it is we're talking about from a point of view of being mistreated. So from a point of view of domestic violence, I think the genre or the overall category is about how we treat one another, and there is actually, so if you use that as a category, of how we treat one another, like that, right? It's like I think that I travelled for 4 years really on my own. I had to go through some of those challenges of revisiting the past. I'm a little bit robust in I can have a conversation about upbringing and the old man, but at the end of the day, his spectrum of domestic violence was when I was doing I was in for the Olympic trials, right, with Taekwondo, and then we had the British Championships at up at Marlow, the Marlow Sports Centre.
Yeah.
And he couldn't even be fucked to fucking drive me up there. He didn't even attend. There were people flying in there, coming in from Scotland, Wales, and I was a contender. I was a contender of winning a gold in the middleweight division in the black belt.
Yeah.
And yet, anyway, I guess my point is that it's about how we treat one another. And there is a fascinating, there was a guy in the States that actually talk about, and actually it's part of Malcolm Gladwell's book called Blink, where people and the erosion of a relationship, they can now do analysis within a 30-second engagement, a contentious engagement, right, between a couple, and they can predict over a 90% accuracy whether or not that relationship will stay, or whether or not they will need to start getting divorce lawyers.
Right.
And so domestic violence can be, and so the biggest barometer is the thing about contempt, and why I loved all the thing about in fact that is the connection why I loved it so much, is because you're actually addressing these hidden subtleties, or these hidden behaviours, unconscious behaviours about how we treat one another, which can be equally as bruising and debilitating and damaging as a physical assault. So so now it's the concept. Right now I've got that barometer about, okay, how do I treat one another? How do I treat people? In the supermarket, or how do I treat, if I have the argument you and I, or I had with you the other day, I'm like, Chris, I could have handled that a lot better. I don't need to, So it's a constant thing, I think. And once I understand, if somebody doesn't bring it up and just accepts it, then they endorse it. And then that validates it, right? So you have to make a stand.
I completely agree. And with one of these comments on Facebook today, she was saying that these people that you're saying, because one of the opening slides in the domestic violence against women says, no one can hold power over you unless you allow them to. And she basically says that's utter bullshit. Kind of not really utter bullshit. It's like, with regards to things like, domestic violence. I don't know, this thing that's called, is it Stockholm Syndrome, where, I don't know what it is, but when someone's taken a hostage and then the hostage becomes compassionate towards the kidnappers because they start to see their side of the story, and they end up not wanting to be saved because they actually agree with their kidnappers, which is, I don't know how often that happens, but anyway, but sort of sticking back onto the point that I was thinking about, is like with anxiety, or with that other video that we've got coming up called Intrusive Thoughts, is that, and I've been through intrusive thoughts, mate, where I literally, I don't know if I did tell you, but I just was about to say to Dawn, please just go and get the Bible. I need you to read something, anything out of the Bible to me, because I honestly thought I was going insane. This thought was consuming me, and it was tearing me up inside, and I felt like I just needed to lie on the floor, curled up, with Dawn's sweet voice, just reading something from the Bible. Anything. I just needed to have anything to just get me out of where I was. And what it boils down to, that I wonder, what you say is that, how we treat people and having contempt for other people by the space that we're in, is that if a guy or a girl decides that they're going to attack their partner, is that based on an initial thought that is just blown out of context? So, for example, she gets home 5 minutes later than she said, and he automatically gets this thought, she's been unfaithful, and then that blows up to, he starts imagining her having sex with this, and so it just blows up and blows up and blows up in his imagination. And so by the time she walks in the door, he's already 10 out of 10 angry, based on zero facts.
That's actually, but that gets to a point where, what values you think that's okay to, have control or power. So that's a power. This is really all around. People have very little control or ability to form the kind of life that is rewarding. And so when people get into that state, they're not even thinking. It's conditioning, right? It is, and it's like actually having values that you say, right, these are accepted. This is okay to do because no one's pulled me up, or she's just going to take it, and I'm going to feel better in the moment because I can at least control her. And then it's a matter of saying sorry, and then it's a matter of trying to patch it together if they've stayed together. But it's conditioning. You're not even thinking about it. You're not thinking about because that requires you to be the observer of your thinking. Yeah. And most people aren't aware that they can become an observer of their thinking. And in fact, one of the things which is fascinating with that is actually when people say, "Well, I'm just telling the truth." Well, you're not actually. All you're doing is telling us your opinion based on what you think is true. So if you think that it's okay to hit a woman because, I'm just warning her. If she ever does have an affair, this is what she can expect. And it's that when when was that okay? That might have been okay with you fucking, carrying a club around and there was a saber-toothed tiger and, emotions were just raw and triggered behaviour. But in today's society, it's a matter of people actually being able to have the abilities to think about their thinking.
Yeah.
And for me, I know, because I'm better than I was, but I think you'd agree that, I can be fairly angry and aggressive and, sometimes I'm not the most pleasant person, I've got better. I mean, I've managed to have a relationship that's close to 20 years old and, we're closer today than we ever have been. We have our arguments, etc., but, I'm reflective of how somebody can be violent or aggressive. And the thing is, you hate yourself. You absolutely, mistreat, unless you're a psychopath, 99.9% of people, when they're actually violent or angry, are regretful for that anger, because they're not in control of themselves. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that people who think that there's power in force without any control is just weak. There's no strength there.
Yeah, no strength of character, no strength of will. I completely agree. I also think that there's triggers. Okay, so like drugs is a completely, a separate issue, but all too often I'm sure that a lot of violence, domestic violence, at some stage has drugs involved, or it's not alcohol. It's some mind-altering substance that is involved in domestic violence. And of course there'd be domestic violence victims that are in a relationship where there is no drug-altering substances, but if you've got somebody that gets this thought, a trigger, so a trigger might be that this guy was cheated on, or his girlfriend cheated on him 10 years ago and it cut him to pieces, and he's never got over it. It took him, he stalked her and whatever. She ended up moving away and he could never find her again. And years later he gets into another relationship, she's late, the new girlfriend turns up late, and all of a sudden it's a trigger for him. Is she cheating on me? Because his self-worth, I'm just this particular example of being cheated on, his self-worth might have been damaged so much that he wasn't good enough for his previous girlfriend, that she had to go elsewhere. And so when he gets into a new relationship where basically she is enabling his insecurities by making sure that she gets home bang on time, just so that he doesn't feel insecure. So she's enabling that in him, and that's one of millions of things that people enable their partners in. It doesn't help. She's actually part of the problem by enabling him. But is she also so attached to him that she's afraid of hurting his feelings, or telling him the truth, or saying, look, shut the F up, I'm late because, and I might continue to be late, so just deal with it. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know how many relationships actually have that kind of approach, saying, okay, you got a problem, you got some baggage, we need to deal with it, because it's going to come up, whether you've had too much to drink or whether or not there's a trigger that can happen through listening to a song that you and your girlfriend used to love years ago. You know what I mean? So it's...
Well, no, I mean, it's so, one of the things is, so if I'm late, so that's really interesting, because I can be, if so I said to Nat, she go, well, what time are you home? And try normally cook, right? So I'll be home 6:15, let's say. If I'm 6:20, right, and I'm walking from the train, so no, listen, where are you? Literally, where are you? And you go, fucking hell, I'm 10 minutes away, I can't even be bothered to SMS. Whereas Nat, she can be half an hour late, right? Nothing. And then if it's half an hour, then I'll phone her, and she's like, oh, my phone's dead or something, whatever. Anyway, but it's, people have different values that do then start to conflict, right? So it's like, well, why is it okay for you to SMS me or call me? Why can't you just call me to tell me that you're late, right? So again, but it's how you're dealing. There is no, I don't think there's any such thing as a straight road in a relationship. about is how we're dealing with conflict, because there's always going to be conflict in a relationship. You know, I don't come home, oh my God, and the butterflies, start to fly around in the hallway, and Nat comes down and, whatever get up she wants.
Throwing rose petals at your feet.
Right, but and it is frustrating. Like, I think what is interesting is that, we deal with pressures in life. And getting angry is a natural phenomenon. It's an innate emotion that is triggered. I think, does Harry get angry? We all get angry. How you deal with that? How you deal with that? Some guy crosses your road and goes, fucking get out of the way, you arsehole. It's like, do you ram him, and try and ram him off the road, or do you just, guy's having a bad day, right? But the thing is that conflict there, it's it's a matter of how are we dealing with the pressures of life? How are we dealing with our own insecurities? There's the Aboriginal community. The domestic violence in the Aboriginal community, it's horrific. There's a local team up in Cairns, and it's their sponsors no to domestic violence. But the problem is that alcohol. To your point, alcohol, frustration, very little self-worth, because they might be in a cycle of whatever it is. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that John Gotti, that name of that love lab, right? It's John Gottman is the guy that does it. It's at the research lab. And what I'm trying to get at is that it's like, I think we just need to we behave like we're in caveman, because our brain hasn't really developed along with our natural phenomena. And so when we're stressed, and when we come home and you don't have enough money in the bank to pay your mortgage might be behind, or fucking whatever. It's like, how do I deal with the fact that I fucking feel inadequate in living in this world? And I genuinely think, I think we're, the reason why there's so much kind of angst on social media or whatever, is like, I want to have an idea that I'm right about. You know what I mean? And that comes down to control. And so domestic violence, or this thing that we're talking about, I really genuinely believe that it's the opportunity to think about our thinking, to understand, how we are developing into who we are becoming, or who we've become, and actually having the strength to go, you know what, I'm fucking sorry. Actually, I feel inadequate. I feel scared of losing you, right? I tell you, man, if we are able to get to that point, I reckon, because all of a sudden now is that I'm actually working on myself within a relationship, and the purpose of a relationship, in my mind, is that you can share your inadequacies and weaknesses. And I had an argument with Nat the other day, and she came at me, and I was meeting this director from work. We're still on this deal for the anyway, and I said, I'm meeting him at Killer Billy. Mate, it was 5 o'clock on a Friday. You're always going out down the pub. I'm like, it's part of my job. I'll be back at 6:30. It's not like I'm leaving at 9 o'clock at night and coming back at 2 o'clock in the morning. But the thing is, it really pissed me off. Like, really pissed me off. And then I said a few things, blah, 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 and then she SMS'd me, I SMS'd her, and I came back, and I said, you know what, I'm not having a whole night. I said, Nat, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't be able to do that. I tell you, I think it was really difficult to say that, as opposed to defending a behaviour that I'd triggered, to your point. And I think, again, that's the problem, is that we then start trying to defend ourselves, and because it's so hard to say, I'm sorry, I fucked up, I'm actually, you know what, I don't know why I do that shit, I'm sorry. So, you know what I mean, it's not, I think a lot of people who are exhibiting domestic violence, who actually, I don't think they're proud of themselves, but I don't think they know how to change themselves. So the persecutor, to some extent, I'm going to say this, is a victim in their own sense.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. And, as you and I both are aware, it wasn't all sunshine and roses growing up at home, but we could have turned out really different. Because we knew a lot of abuse from, the old man hitting us and stuff. And I experienced it at 5 and being thrown across the room and hitting, my body being slammed against a metal bed. And that confused me. I tried to address it in that book, Big Stone, Big Splash, but I'm better with words verbally than I am writing them down. I'm too impatient when it comes to writing down. But, I look back and I had the wherewithal to be able to address, okay, how could that affect me? How do I not want it to affect me? So I was looking, like you say, think about what you're thinking about. And so I became aware that, okay, well, I could, that's why at primary school I was always fighting, because I thought that was the only thing you did to get along, was you just had to fight. Right. You had to fight everybody. And then my first day at secondary school was the most horrific introduction to school, when within the first 10 minutes, some guy way bigger than me, here I am, one of the toughest guys at Church of England school, go to Wellesbourne. I mean, the first 10 minutes, someone put the cigarette out of my head. And then he looked at me, and I was just like, oh my God, the abuse continues. But I can't. Pardon?
It's horrific.
Yeah. And this guy would be a classic domestic violence perpetrator. I'd seen how he was. But tough guy at school, and he knew the way he treated his women. There's behind closed doors, I felt sorry for her. Until one day, he picked on the wrong guy in the schoolyard. And I don't know if you can remember a black guy at Wellesbourne, Ezra. He was
Ezra, yeah. Actually, I knew him when I was hanging around with Gordon Finley. It was...
No, nothing wrong with Gordon.
Nothing wrong with Gordon.
But Ezra literally took what that cigarette butt took out of me on my head, took all of the tough guy out of me from primary school. And Ezra took out of the guy that put that cigarette out on my head all of his toughness out in one afternoon in the schoolyard. And I'm not saying, you're talking about domestic violence. This was violence between two guys getting into a fight, and Ezra just smacked the evil out of him. Oh, didn't smack it out of him, but he put him in his place. And Ezra was a really nice guy. But
it is. I think one of the things is. I think one of the things is, if it was right and wrong, again, I'm coming back to this point about opinions, where somebody might say something and all of a sudden you're like, no, I don't like. It's like, well, what about the idea don't you like? Because there could be 10 elements within an idea. So this thing around domestic violence, I don't think it's right. I don't think that's the bad guy, that's the good guy. Do you know what I mean? Now, I think what we're doing is, it's an issue that has multi layers of. Because if you don't understand the problem, you can't address it. And what I've seen in society is we have White Ribbon Day, and so we are putting lipstick on the pig a little bit. Yeah. Because I think what society does is that they blame. There's a good guy and a bad guy. There's a good person and a bad person. There's a victim and a persecutor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that's helpful in addressing. I think that your videos, from my point of view, I think what the videos really show is that domestic violence can start from showing contempt. Just not, when there's a conflict, being dismissive and. But also, then there is the actual violence. There is, the thumping and the physical aspect.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, too, is that what is that? What's happening?
Yeah.
Because right at the end of the day, we are reinforcing the male of persona in society as being a tough guy, that when there's a problem, you know, he beats the crap out of somebody. And all the videos, you know, I mean, look at the Avengers, right? Look at all these, you've got to be masculine and fucking ripped and fly through the sky, and if somebody does you a wrong, you attack that guy. Right? You attack that person. You know, you must have a foe. And I think what the problem is that I do a lot of I'm in this history thing at the moment around the First and Second World Wars, and amazing. If you ever want to feel that you have actually a nice life, you could be hung up by your balls, honestly, mate, with fishing wire. You read one of these books about, you know, someone's experience in the trenches or out in Stalingrad, man, you're just like, man, I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's all good over here, mate. You know, it's like, I think what I'm getting at is that, there is pain in people's lives. I believe whenever there is violence, whenever there is, and I'm actually going to do a series of videos actually on just pure emotion, about what the intent of emotion is. But whenever you are actually feeling, you know, despair, angry, you know, it's like, because they've got no control over their lives.
Yeah.
But society kind of like almost forces us to have that kind of comparison about we should be in control. We should know what we're doing. We should know, you know, how to manage. You know, I tell you, the worst fucking thing, mate, is corporate managers. Mate, corporate management from a point of view of bullying. So let's now talk about domestic violence to bullying, right? Because they're the same thing, but just with a different title.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I'll tell you, mate, you could talk about corporate bullying as you know, domestic violence. Because that's what it's called, corporate violence.
Yeah, and Hanny was a victim of that when she was with a particular online ordering company, which I won't name, but I was, when we were in Parramatta, she rang me up and in tears, and it takes a lot for Hanny. Hanny's a tough stick.
Right.
And yeah, she's had her challenges growing up, I can tell you. And
no, I think she mentioned something. Because her dad was a karate expert, master.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, she rang me up. She was working in the CBD in Sydney, and she rang me up in tears, and she said she didn't know what she was going to do when she walked back into the office. She had to go out. She just had to walk out.
Right.
And it tore me in two. It tore me apart to think, oh, well, she's like 20, 30 kilometres away. All I wanted to go and do is go, wrap her in cotton wool, take her back into the office and punch the living out of the person. So again, it's not the answer, violence, but that's how angry I felt about someone hurt my baby, you know, someone hurt my wife. So the corporate, and this was a very, very nasty piece of work that was literally, bullying her and belittling her abilities that were, well, she was never, that wasn't part of her job role. But
I tell you, in fact, it's fascinating because you talked about when we had a bit of argy-bargy last week. You said, you know, how would I behave in the boardroom? Mate, I have been in front of the CEO of the company I work for.
Yeah.
And this is I am not bullshitting you. We did a forecast. So I used to go. I was business manager for the VP, and we were in the meeting room. He is a public figure. He didn't like our forecast, and he goes, you know what, fuck you, you're a fucking idiot, you are a fucking idiot. Yeah, no, mate, he went fucking apoplectic. Now, right, so my VP took stress leave, and he actually suffers from depression and is caring. So then all of a sudden, my managing director thinks it's okay to talk to me like that. Right? So now the CEO set an example, right? And we're in meetings where this guy started really losing it. And the only reason why I kind of spoke up, because I've just done so many, you know, I've done martial arts, you know, for a long okay in the moment. But I just thought, fucking hell. I said to him, do you think, I said, do you think you're talking to your wife or something, mate? I said, hey, when do you get the sense of entitlement to think that it's okay to talk to me like this? And it's just like this thing about, and so, it's just not this, that we go into one environment, I'm domestic violence against my wife, but I'm a really nice guy, when I'm delivering milk for a living.
Yeah.
And I'm a really nice guy, when someone cuts me off, in traffic, and I'm a really nice guy when I'm out with my mates, and it's just like, it's kind of this cultural thing that I think it's not a matter of just addressing domestic violence. I genuinely believe it's about how we start treating one another in a way that we start thinking about our thinking. But if we do want to, this is about, for me, the hidden self. And that is actually probably why I didn't go down that road, because I want to look at the meta data, or the stuff about why we do some of the stuff. And I tell you, there's an opportunity there about, this is how we do things. This is how we can behave. And it's funny when you talk about being brought up. I remember being brought up. I remember the first time I went to a house where people actually started, talking very civil to one another. Mm. And that the husband who actually, was kind, talking to the wife. Or when the kid did something wrong, and it was a guy called Neil Watson, and I think he smashed something absolutely accidentally, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go, he's just going to get smashed across the room, because that's what had happened with me, right? Or you. If we smashed him a cup or a mug, it meant more, And he just said, are you okay, Neil? I think he said. I'm like, huh?
Yeah. I think there's where also you got perpetrators that have had a history of it in their family. Like they were bullied as a kid, or they were beaten as a kid. So, a lot of victims and perpetrators have not had happy childhoods, and quite often, domestic violence victims are actually attracted to people that remind them of their father or their mother. And irrespective, and tell you interesting as we sort of look at winding this down in a sec. But yesterday, Henny and I were on our way to a job, and this thing just out of the blue just came into my head, and it's about you see people that are doing whatever it is they're doing, and do you ever wonder, like Chris, as a question, do you ever sometimes look at people and think, do they really know that they're alive? Do they ever realise that phenomena that it is for them to be here on this planet? Do they ever look at nature and see how, apart from how the world is from a societal point of view, but with all the greed and corruption and the politicians, it's rife across the world. The top 1% own 99% of the wealth, and everyone else is a poor bastard victim, and blah blah blah. But you get also these people that blindly vote or blindly buy whatever they see on television because hurry now, offer ends, da 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 da, and so I said to Henny, these sorts of people that blindly go along with their life, knowing that they've got to, they'll get a house, right, for $600,000-$700,000. And they work in the CBD, so they've got to get on a train. They get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. They've got to get on a train for 5:45. They get to work because they're afraid of being late because of repercussions, and then they work all day, stressed as anything, and then they get on the train to get back home, and it's dark again, and they do that 5 days a week to pay off a mortgage. And then they go through this very, very well. What pretty much society is they work to pay off something that they're generally indebted to. Nearly everybody has debt.
The challenge you have is that model is changing. Look at the yellow vests, right, in France.
Yeah.
I mean, society. I mean, the fabric of our society is dramatically changing. And there is this thing around universal basic income, about where jobs become just redundant, and the haves will have to pay for people not to have a job because there's just going to be so much automation. But that model, I was thinking about this yesterday too. In the 80s, but the thing is that the forces that drove us into this capitalism, right, was as a result of the Second World War. So it's called white goods syndrome. Right? It's you don't throw shit out because it's broken. It's because you want a new model. It's like cars, right? And the thing is, you can't have designed obsolescence constantly in shit, right? But mate, you just walk around the street where it's that white goods throw out day, and there's fucking plasma TVs.
Yeah.
There's the amount of microwaves you see. They're not all broken. Or white goods that are thrown out because you got a new one or whatever it is. Like they're not broken. These aren't broken. But the thing is that having that material driver is actually starting to wane, and these are going to have massive implications. To your point, is like, but the problem you also have is that they're not doing it for themselves anymore, mate. That poor bastard or poor person who's that's leaving the house at 7 a.m. in the morning and getting back at 7 and then having to drive the kids or whatever, or cook or whatever it is, they're doing it for their kids. So now all of a sudden, their sense of enjoyment, their sense of in what's my purpose in life, like, that is just... So people, to your point, they're consumed. They are consumed by their worries and their stresses. Yeah. And when you are consumed by your stresses and your worries and service debt problems, is that your brain takes over, mate. You're unfortunately the thing is you're living externally to your internal self, and and unfortunately that hijacks your ability to actually think about the roses, or wow, that's really interesting. See how that root system has navigated around that wall to find to track and find nutrients that it's just hunting constantly. Tree roots are constantly hunting, but when you've got a person that and mate, that's the majority of society, mate, is that because they've never been taught to think about their thinking, and it's click word stuff. Yeah. So,
and that's what my I guess little term that I came up for those kind of people, without being judgmental, but at the end of the day, where we sort of bringing this into a full circle sort of thing, is that it's for people to become more aware about what they're thinking. So these people that I'm talking about, that you've just described as well, is that I want to make a video that's titled "People Who Fall Out of the Sky." Is that they're just here, and then all of a sudden they're on the treadmill. You know what I mean? They're just on the treadmill. They haven't gone through this process of what we've been talking about. Is hang on, learn to think, man. Learn to think about what it is to be here. Learn to think about the amazing potential that you have. But these people who fall out of the sky, they don't know where they've come from. They just know they're here, and they go, I've got to do a job.
Well, the thing is, Jonathan, I mean, and I know we'll have to wrap it up a bit, but the challenge to have though is that because of let's go. So let's assume now then, okay, so many people feel inadequate, right? Because they don't really have a firm understanding or firm control about how to drive their life. They think, I had a conversation with someone the other day. They bought a new Audi, and I was like, you had a really nice. It's not that they've got an abundance of money; they've got okay income. But why would you want a fucking new car? I don't get that. You've got a beautiful Lexus, and now you've put yourself into a hop for another 5 years. And he doesn't have a car allowance, so it's all come out. I was like, man, don't you just want to get out of this rut and just drive for something? Then you can be free about pursuing other opportunities. And he's like, but what would that be? It was literally like he's never been asked that question before.
No,
he just thinks,
And that's spot on. Yeah, I agree with you, mate. And like, people do get this thing with society drives us to think that our value is linked to the size of the house or the type or style of the car, and you know because it's external success. It's a sign of it's an external sign of success.
We're conditioned to it.
Yeah,
we are conditioned.
But fortunately for me, though, having had lots and lots of money years ago, you know, one of the first things I wanted to get was a Porsche, and I could have got one, but we opted to go for the CLK 350, whatever it was, sports Mercedes convertible, and but before that we got an ML 350 four-wheel drive Mercedes. And that was $90,000. 3 years later, I wanted to trade it in, and Mercedes. No, I just wanted to trade it in to get a nicer one. Mercedes offered me $15,000 for it, and I said to him, "Hang on, this was $90,000. I haven't even finished paying it off yet, but you're offering me $15,000 for it. What's wrong with it?" And they said, "Oh well, you know, new models have come out," and that was the beginning of the end of my materialistic desire for things that were for me. I didn't know what I didn't know, but for me it was a sign of success. And you know, I'd bullshit myself saying, "Oh yeah, but it's four-wheel drive," and you know, never been off a bloody road, you know, and oh, but this has got airbags in all frigging parts of the car, so safe for kids. You know, just justify it to yourself. I never had an accident. The kids were never in danger. But all of these things that we justify with ourselves, they say, you know, the buying motives that we had, if we buy for safety or we buy for things that make us for prestige, you know, all these different buying motives, and then we sell ourselves. We sell ourselves because there's a need to give some sort of external reflection of, oh yeah, we've arrived. This is who we are. This is what we do, and you know. But the internal thing, I think, is just the perfect thing that you've been talking about is for us to be able to think. We don't know. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know that we're not thinking about what we're thinking about because we don't know.
No, I mean, I think I'll give you a kind of follow example and then let you wind it up. But there's a fantastic excerpt out of a book called Masamune Musashi. He was a samurai. Actually, he was a Ronin, but anyway, one or the other. And so he basically went around Japan trying to fight other samurai in the day. Anyway, he goes off down to this shogun castle and he knocks on the door and this guy comes out and he's like, "Oh well, I want to fight you, shogun." And the guy tells him to piss off. He said, "Well look, just give me," and he went off into the reed and he cut down this reed and he said, "Just give this to your master." And he said, "Oh yeah, piss off." And anyway, the shogun was watching upstairs and abbreviating the story somewhat, but he came down and he said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Oh, some worthless Ronin that wanted to combat you." He said, "What did he give you?" He said, So he gave him the cut reed, and he turned it upside down and he looked at the precision of how Masamune Musashi cut the reed, and he became chestful and he said, "That is no ordinary Ronin. He would have cut me in half within 2 strikes." And it's this ability to see things in things that we find valuable, but we don't. We're not taught that. The Japanese are, well, some of the Asian cultures are, but it's this thing where it's like, what beauty is in a weed, that's growing in my pathway. It's desired to. There's beauty in fucking sun coming up, sun coming down. It's like beauty in my fingers, my ability to touch or to have a thought about something. It's like we need to become more. I think to be interested in the smallest things, or to teach ourselves. And it's not all. Well, it's like somebody saying, "I'm a Capricorn, therefore I can't do anything."
Yeah.
You know, oh, you Aries are all right because you're all fiery, and I'm like Capricorn, and I'm it's like, what? What are you talking about? You know, you're going to be defined on a fucking star sign. You know.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I remember a book I read years ago, Man's Search for Meaning, and I think it was that particular book. And the guy who was actually a surgeon, he said, when we cut ourselves, he said, I know how the skin heals, but I don't know why.
Right.
And I was like, right, maybe he's just suggesting that there is something we really all ought to sort of be mindful of, is that we are self-healing, not just physically. We can cut our hand, and it will take time. Put a bandage on it, put a bit of antiseptic on it. But if you don't, it can get infected and get worse. And a similar analogy could be to the human mental condition: is if you're scarred and you don't dress it properly, then it becomes infected, or your mind, your attitude towards people and yourself becomes infected. And that, I don't think, is any different to the healing of the skin. It's like, okay, if you've been scarred or if you've been cut, you know, there's got to be a way, for perhaps now, that we go to people or try and deliver something that sort of addresses what you've been talking about, and what I guess I'm talking about as well, is that, well, hang on, are we dealing with broken people, these perpetrators? Are they already scarred and infected? What do we do to try and teach them, both male and females, to think about what they're thinking about, to perhaps become a little bit more reflective on the fact that they have probably never ever looked at this subject, and they probably
totally agree.
Okay, mate.
No, that's fantastic. I think that's good place to end, and I think that's an awesome conversation.
All right, mate. Well, I'll chat to you soon about stuff. All right, mate.
Good talking to you, Jay.
Yeah, you
All the
too.
best.
See you, mate. Bye.
Take care. Bye.